This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barry Colfer, and I'm the Director of Research here at the Institute of International European Affairs. A very sincere welcome to those who have joined us here in sunny Dublin for this very exciting exchange. And it's our very first one with our colleagues from the Embassy of Chile in Ireland. It's our newest member, indeed, here at the IIEA. A very sincere welcome to Her Excellency Constanza Figuera, and a warm welcome to Dublin. You're relatively new here, and we're very, very pleased to be involved in this engagement, and with Pablo Solar Salas and the whole team. Just thank you very much for this opportunity. I merely have the joy of bringing a bit of wish to the room, and just to hand it directly over to Ambassador Figuera, who's going to say a couple of words before handing over to Eamon Gilmore, who's going to officially welcome our special guest here today for this exciting discussion. So thank you very much, and Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barry. Mr. and Mrs. Ambassadors, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to thank the Institute of International and European Affairs, represented today for Mr. Eamon Gilmore and Mr. Barry Colgar, Director of Research, for the warm welcome they have extended to our embassy to present this afternoon an important official from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Gloria de la Fuente. As a Chilean ambassador, I am very proud to have such an important authority from our country in Dublin to discuss the threat to democracy and how we can defend this system, which is currently weakened and in danger of disappearing in many countries around the world. I don't want to go on too long, and I just to thanks again to all of you for being here to listen about how we in Chile view the challenges facing democracy in Latin America. And let me present to Mr. Eamon Gilmore, former Taoiseach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for the introduction, and also for your support in the organization of this important event today. And welcome to you, Undersecretary of State. Welcome to everybody in the room to the event, and welcome also to all of those who are joining us online today. Couple of house rules that will be very familiar to those of you who are here even more regularly than I am. First is that this discussion is on the record. We will have an address from the Undersecretary of State, and then we will have a question and answer session, and I will ask you to identify yourselves during that. And please feel free to tweet. The handle is at IIEA if you're doing that. So I'm going to go straight into it. We have a discussion today that couldn't be more timely. Discussion about the challenges facing democracy, with specific reference to Latin America, but it is a topic that is truly global these days. And we're very honored to have with us Dr. Gloria de la Fuente, who is a Chilean political scientist, Ph.D. in social science from the Universidad de Chile, currently serving as the Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs of Chile since 2023. Gloria has worked extensively on transparency and access to public information, notably as President of the Council for Transparency. She has served as a consultant for Eurosocial and the Transparency and Access to Public Information Network, and led projects at Chile Transparente, the Chilean chapter of Transparency International. Dr. de la Fuente held senior roles at Fundación Chile 21, Chilean think tank dedicated to promoting democratic governance, social equity, and progressive public policies, where she served as Director of Public Policy, Executive Director, and later as President. And in April 2024, she received the Women's Leaders of Reference Award from the Women's Economic Forum, recognizing her leadership in advancing gender equality, and advocating for equity and inclusion. Dr. De La Fuente, the floor is yours, and we look forward very much to what you have to say to us today.
It's a really honor to me to stay here today. We visit Dublin because tomorrow we have a political consultation, the 7th round of the political consultation, but I think it's so important to discuss now in this moment the challenge of the democracy also. No, because we are in the world with a lot of change, and now we want to talk about the Latin America and the challenge in Latin America. Thank you, Gilmore, for this, Eamon Gilmore, for this invitation. It's an honor for me to stay here today. Thank you, Barry, because it's important for us to stay here, and the conversation with the academic issues too, and the academic researchers is so important. And we understand that is a good opportunity to show you and share you some of our relation and our reflection about this. It is a real pleasure, that I say, to be here today and the Institute of International and European Affairs, Ireland, leading the think tank for the informed debate on the European and international affairs. Allow me to extend my sincere gratitude to Mr. Alex White, Director General of the International and European Affairs, for his kind invitation to participate in this event. I would also like to warmly greet the distinguished academic, policymakers, and esteemed members of the diplomatic corps joins us today here, and I understand connected with the streaming. Chile and Ireland, despite being geographically distant and united, they share values, a profound commitment to democracy, human rights, multilateralism, and respect for international law. It is truly an honor to be here, like I said. Today, I would like to explore the contemporary challenge facing democracy in Latin America, challenge that, while specific to our region, echo global dynamics that also concern Europe. For started, I think to inability of states, particularly those in our region, to provide answers to emerging problems. This is due, in part, to the complexity of phenomena that have begun to emerge in Latin America, such as the climate crisis, massive irregular migration, organized crime or disinformation campaigns, but also because public policies haven't been effective enough in addressing these issues. We need a response that embodies the democratic values we strive to protect and promote with our such dedication. For this response to be effective, it is essential to rethink our institutional capacities and strengthen transparency and citizens' participation, and foster intergovernmental and international collaboration. In this scenario, regional integration in Latin America once again takes on a especially urgency. In the face of increasing political fragmentation and the trend towards isolated national response, the region needs to revitalize its cooperation mechanism. Their exist instruments must reformulate their agendas to address common challenge with greater coordination. In fact, fragmentation weakens our voice in the international arena and reduce our capacity to build joint solutions to transnational problems. It really also affects us the instability of regional international environment influence on our foreign policy. Our democratic system serves as the foundation from which we address global and regional challenge, and we are particularly concerned about the current state of democratic institutions in Latin America. In this context, promoting the defense of the democracy cannot be taken for granted. We are witnessing a new wave of the democratic backsliding, marked by the government with authoritarian tendencies and despite being elected through democratic processes, gradually erode the institutional checks and balances. The role of the diplomacy and the multilateralism forum is denouncing these practices, supporting the civil society, and strengthening independent electoral bodies become crucial. We need to reclaim the shared conviction that democracy is not just a procedure, but an ethical and a collective commitment. To be better understand these global processes, I would like to briefly reference the political scientist Samuel Huntington and his theory about wave of democratization. Huntington argued that from the 19th century onwards, transition from the authoritarian to democratic regimes and vice versa have rarely occurred in isolation, but instead have tended in unfold and synchronized global processes. He identified three major waves of democratization punctuated by two periods of the regression. The first wave from 1828 and 1926 saw the consolidation of democracies in America and Europe, being interrupted by the emergence of the fascist dictatorships in Europe during the interwar period. The second wave, between 1945 and 1960, coincided with the decolonization, but was quickly reversed by the dictatorship in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Finally, a third wave, which began to the democratization of Portugal, Greece, and Spain, gained strength in Latin America and reaches its peak with the fall of the Soviet Union, which led many to think that democracy will finally be definitive. However, as Adam Tversky has pointed out, democracy is inherently fragile and vulnerable, being a recurring phenomenon in history. These crises can manifest themselves as institutional awakening, the rise of xenophobic and racist movements, extreme polarization, and growing citizen distrust and democratic systems. All this challenge requires response for our institutions that guarantee democratic survival. If we look the current global panorama, the might has ourselves is we are experiencing a third wave of democratic regression. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, in 2025 Democratic Index, almost half of the world's population, 45%, live under some form of the democracy. However, only 6.6% do so in a full democracy. More worryingly, more than a third of the world population, 39.2%, live under authoritarian regimes. If you see the next slide, yeah. This worrying really is a token with Latin America. Today, in the region, we are facing profound democratic deterioration, according to the same index of the Economist Intelligence Unit that you showed in this slide. Only Uruguay and Costa Rica are considered full democracies. We are a lot of discussion about the political science, about how do you measure the democracy? But this is interesting issue that interests results. What's more, of the 24 countries in the region included this study, 17 scored lower than the previous years, on the only 5 showed improvements. These figures reflects a trend that worried us. There is a sustained awakening of democracy in our continent. Although democracy in the region reaches 52% citizen support in 2024, satisfaction with the functioning remains low. 65% of the people are not satisfied with the way of the system operates. The figure 1, I have you mentioned it, correspond to the 2024 Latino Barometer and confront us a paradox. As long as there is the support for democratic ideals, distrust of the institution prevails. Globally, the picture is not much different. In fact, 2025 study by the University of Southampton published in the British Journal of Policy Science revealed that citizen trust in representative institutions has fallen steadily since the 1990s. The authors of the study pointed out this distrust in institutions can open a space for the emergence of the populist or authoritarian leaders and phenomena that they are observing in our region, where there has been this proliferation of candidacies that openly present themselves as anti-system. This phenomena is particularly evident in the election year, such as the ones we are currently experiencing. International IDEA stresses that the 2024 election took place in the context defined by radical uncertainty. Electoral credibility worsened significantly in the more than fifth of countries, 39 out 173. Between 2018 and 2023. At the same time, traditionally voter turnout has declined with an increase in political demonstration such as protests and riots. Especially worrying is the increase of the so-called punishment vote and the direct expression of the citizen discontent, and phenomena that affect to a greater extent young people and historically marginalized social sector who today feel deeply disconnected from the traditional politics. In the face of this crisis, it's the worth asking ourselves what are the minimum conditions to guarantee democratic stability and legitimacy. In this sense, the prominent political scientist Guillermo O'Donnell, Argentinian political scientist, that passed away 10 years ago, I think, pointed out some necessary elements to prevent the decline of the democracy. The existence of the effective check on our political power, a solid rule of law, transparency and accountability, inclusion, and effective social participation, and the protection of human rights. But these minimum conditions are difficult to meet. And there are various factors that have progressively weakened the democracy, most of which have already been described in the literature of political science. Authors such as Norberto Bobbio, already in 1984, warned about the 6 unfulfilled promises of democracy: promise of equality, transparency, participation, and peace that have often been relegated to the reality of exclusionary, opaque, of the ineffective system. Thus, the situation in which we find ourselves today in our region and in the world is presented to us a set of varied factors that are more and less known but always present. And what they cannot fail to see, and this gap between the ideas and the reality has been fertile ground of the emergence of populism that offer simplistic solutions to complex problems, eroding the institutional basis of the system. Because when the democratic institutions fail to respond to the expectation of the citizens, space are opened for the autocracies that promise ordered exchange for the rights. In this way, it could be pointed out of the democracy in our region faces a persistent paradox. On the one hand, it is witnesses to a strong wave to the democratization in recent decades. On the other, this transition has not been without tensions. Advances in electoral representation and civil rights have coexisted with the high levels of inequality, structural violence, corruption, and weakened institutions. This combination has generated democracies that function more as electoral regimes than as true space of substantive participation in social justice. To this is indeed a deeper problem for the founding dilemmas of the states. In the many countries of the region, the construction of the modern state has been traversed by the unsolved historical fractures, social exclusions, exclusions, centralism, structural racism, that delimit the real scope of democratic institutions. The weight capacity of the state to implement public policies, guarantees justice, or contain violence is also a consequence of these problematical roots. Therefore, institutional strengthening must be approached not only from the technical reforms, but from the perspective that recognizes and addresses these structural legacies. Today, in particular, I would like to refer to the three or this problem or phenomena on factors that are already established in political theory and that are affecting democracy in our country and our region, Latin America. First, the deterioration of the political parties has reduced the relation between citizen and state. The weakening of the political parties has seriously fractured the relation between citizens and the state in Latin America. In Chile, a study by the Pontificia Universidad Católica revealed that barely 1% of the population trusts this organization, a figure that illustrates a widespread phenomenon through the region. This crisis of representativeness is not an isolated event, but a clear sign of the need to renew democratic channels and recover lost institutional legitimacy. In many countries, political parties are perceived as ineffective, corrupt structures distant of the real social concerns. This perception has generated a vacuum in political intermediation that has been quickly filled by personalistic leaderships and polarizing discourses. The so-called affective polarization, where emotion replaces argument and sympathy for rejection of the leaders' our wake programs, and has intensified with the rise of social networks, further weakening public debate and favoring authoritarian scenarios. Not only in Latin America, of course, in different parts in the world happens the same thing. The data reflect disaffection at the regional level. In Peru, for example, 85% of the population declared that they have a little or not confidence in the parties, according to Institute of Peruvian Studies in 2024. In Argentina, 2025 polls research only 8% express high confidence in them, while Mexico, despite a slight improvement in the perception of the government parties, continued to be one of the worst rated institutions with only 33 approval, according to the OECD. Colombia is not except for this trend either. According to OECD survey in the driver's trust in 2024, only 18% of citizens express high or moderately high trust in political parties, placing them among the institutions with the least credibility in the country. This deterioration has coincided with the sustained increase in effective polarization. In Chile, the post-plebiscite survey in the Adolfo Ibáñez University registered a record of 5.6 out of the 10 in the indicator on 2024. Which reflect a scenario of high emotional tension in politics. This phenomenon also represents in consolidated democracies such as United States constitute a seriously challenge to institutional stability in Latin America, since it erodes the foundation of pluralism and democratic dialogue. Secondly, and the liking of the above, we have seen in recent years a rise in the personalist leaderships that try to concentrate power in weakened institutional counterweights. Many of these leaders have taken advantage of the social and economic unrest to increase the power of the executive and weaken the autonomy and the legislative and judicial branches. And finally, it's found that democratic institutions have been incapable of responding effectively to demand of the citizens, especially in social and economic aspects. Today, security, permanent inflation, and the economic crisis continue to affect the daily lives of the people in Latin America, which has generated frustration among citizens. Without going on any further, according to the United Nations, 170 million of people on the continent living in poverty. The lack of the solution to this problem has inevitably caused democracy to lose and the legitimacy among the population. Regional integration that acquires a key role. In the time of the growing fragmentation and mistrust, there is an urgent need to strengthen ties between countries and share histories, cultures, and challenges. Cooperation not only improves state capacities, but also gives powerful signals to citizens that problems is not faced in isolation. Democracy promotion must be a collective task, especially at the time when we are facing new authoritarian waves that openly change democratic principles. Building a strong, inclusive, and resilient democracy in Latin America requires political courage, regional collaboration, and institutional innovation. The solution cannot be local at short term. They require a shared vision of the future we want to inhabit. In the same way, and beyond these structural factors, today we face dynamics that require attention and they are changing in the way in which power is exercised, information is accessed, and how a state relates their citizens. I am referring to the disinformation and artificial intelligence, migration crisis, and the advance of the organized crime in Latin America. First, the digital revolution has become a paradox for democracy. The silver lining, the internet has increased access to information, democratized the communication, and fostered greater citizen and civil society participation. However, it's also led to disinformation campaigns, content alteration, cyber attack, and hate speech and spread through networking without the restrictions. In the face of this risk, we must protect freedom of expression and quality of the public debates. New digital tools such as artificial intelligence have increased this risk. Algorithms are capable to producing fake images, text, and audios in seconds, calling into question public conversation and transparency during electoral processes, for example. In this scenario, it's urgent to generate a space for reflection and debate, safeguards information integrity, and strengthen digital literacy both nationally and internationally. The digital space has a transnational nature and it requires a coordinated response between state, technology, companies, and civil societies. We need to push for common standards that protect rights, promote transparency, and ensure accountability. This is a complex mission, but essential to ensure that digital space is used to strengthen, not undermine our democracies. Second, forced migration has emerged as a challenge to the governments in our region. As has happened in the Middle East, Europe, and Latin America, migration always involves multiple countries, the country of the origin, transit, and destination. Although there are people who migrate on their own volition, the greatest difficulties are faced by those who must live in their countries by force. War, drought, hunger, political and economic crisis can trigger the exodus of millions of people from their country of their origins. In some cases, this is due to weak democracies of government unable to cope with the economic and the social challenge of the moment. This phenomenon has been very concrete in Chile. Although we are country built on several waves of migration through history from the European continent, the Middle East, and our neighborhoods, we have never received such a significant flow of migrants in such a short time as the last decade. Institutionally, this that has meant a great effort to promote initiatives at the national and international levels. At the regional levels, we have worked through in the Quito process, the Regional Conference of Migration and International Organization for Migration, CELAC, the Organization of America's State, Mercosur, Cartagena Plus 40, and Ibero-American Summit. The balance between the state obligation to receive those seeking asylum of the refugees status without the putting it livelihood of communities at risk in reinforce and strengthen democracy. Although difficult, regional cooperation is the only sustainable way to address this phenomenon. There are not shortcuts. Organized crime, for its part, is one of the most serious threats facing democracy in Latin America. Not only does it undermine citizen security, but it also penetrates institutions, corrupt authorities, weakens the rule of law, and generates parallel economies that destroy the social fabric. We now observe with concern on how transnational criminal networks exploit gaps in the deficiencies of institutions to grow their business and often alliance with local actors. Irregular migration, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and armed violence have been closely associated with organized crime. In this context, a cohesive reaction between the various nations is required that multiple fronts, such as policy collaboration, improvement of the efficiency of the state unit with the obligation, separate intelligence, and guaranteed human rights without exceptions. The fight against organized crime is much more than the issue of policy repression. It's a political problem, an issue of regional cooperation, and it needs to strengthen the democracy for their institutional base. Either we act firmly or organized crime consolidate itself and parallel act on the question of the authority of the state. For this reason, Chile has led different multilateral space to face this challenge. An example of this is our work in the Brasilia Consensus, a South American initiative that seeks to coordinate regional efforts in the face of the common threats such as organized crime, the environmental crisis, institutional weakness, and disinformation. In 2024, under the Chilean presidency of the mechanism, organized crime was identified as one of the priority areas to be working in this cooperation mechanism. In this context, in addition, our country hosted in April of the same year the first meeting in the Ministry and high authorities of public security and organized crime. This work with South American countries shows that we must face this dynamic and act in an unconcerned manner. This current challenge cannot be understood without considering the international context, where we are witnessing transformation that also impact on the health of democracies. In recent years, we have seen how some actors question a liberal international order is emerged and after the Second World War. Specifically, the effectiveness of institutions and respect for the international law when they confront their geopolitical and economic interests has been questioned. This has shown that many prefer power over cooperation. The questioning of multilateralism affects countries such as Chile, which have historically opted for the system based in rules, cooperation, and consensus. In the face of this, it's our duty to defend international law and democratic values. Our country reaffirms a central conviction. Our foreign policy is guided by the liberal principles of international order. In this regard, the protection and promotion of human rights is a priority in Chile's foreign policy. We consider that the same essential characteristic of the area in the we see them foundation of the democratic system. That is why we believe in multilateralism, because it expands our ability to influence in an increasingly independent world. Chile's vocation does not mean separating itself from those countries that are not considered democratic, but opening dialogue and working with them in favor of fundamental rights, such as freedom of expression, association, and assembly. That is why we are actively engaged in the United Nations Human Rights Council. For this reason, we are launching our candidacy for the re-election from the 2026-2028. We do this with conviction because we know from our own experience the importance of the international support. It was the United Nations Human Rights Institution during 17 years of the dictatorship during the transition to democracy that helped to bring human rights relations to light, protect victims, and advance justice in the reparation process. Since the return to the democracy, and also in the times prior to the dictatorship, Chile has been an actor committed to the multilateralism, the defense of human rights, and the promoting of gender equality. Nowadays, it's impossible to think of democracy without considering gender equality in structural access. For this reason, in 2022, we launched our feminist foreign policy, an effort that seeks to achieve the more inclusive and egalitarian society. That is the symbol of our feminist foreign policy. Among the priority issues, the political strengthening of democracy with a focus of gender equality. This approach is especially relevant in a context where the fight for gender equality is sometimes mistakenly labeled as ideology. Defending the rights of women and diversities is not only a matter of justice, but in an essential condition for truly plural, participatory, and representative democracies. Gender equality, far from being an imposition, is an indispensable tool for democratic transformation in societies historically marked by exclusion and inequality. The feminist foreign policy seeks to advance in terms of institutional between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, articulate a gender agenda in areas for the ministry, integrate gender clauses in our trade and strategic association agreements, and increase our multilateral commitment to advancement of the right of women and girls around the world. In addition to this commitment to human rights, gender equality, and defense of the multilateralism, our country is aware there can be no true democracy without achievement sustainable development. The triple planetary crisis, climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss is today a systematic threat to the well-being of society and the balances of the political system. The climate crisis challenges us the demand of urgent and structural response. The most vulnerable communities and the most affected by the phenomena, which depends inequality and test the resilience of their democracy by generating social frustration, insecurity, and forced displacement. Chile has made this challenge an topic priority. We have worked tirelessly on the multilateral agreement to achieve a just and sustainable transition. Without going any further, on the proposal of the host Valparaiso, the Secretary of the Agreement of the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Marine Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. It's a long name, but it's a BB&J in the name in the English. The little name in the English. It's emblematic and the short name. This is emblematic and represent our determination to strengthen ocean governance, science, and international cooperation on their high seas. We are convinced that the solid democracy cannot be obvious and the match protection that causes the environment. Climate action and environment protection is not technical or sectoral issues, but fundamental element to ensure the collective well-being, equity, and sustainability on our society today and the future. It then is a crossword between global challenge and our own fragilities that must rethink the Latin American democracy. Strengthening our institution, integrating our regional agendas, and unambiguous assuming the defense of the democratic system and the task that cannot be postponed. Only in this way we'll be able to build societies that are fairer, more resilient, and capable to responding to the expectation of the citizens and today demand results, inclusion, and the dignity more than ever. This scenario requires a critical reflection about of the foundational dilemmas of our democracies. Unlike other regions, Latin America has often consolidated its state under authoritarian regimes, marked by exclusion, institutional violence, and persist colonial structures. In this sense, our democratic institutions were born with the structural deficit of representation, inclusion, and legitimacy, which even today drag on the translate into the cyclical crisis. This historical institutional weakness has made it difficult to consolidate stable and resilient democratic models. That is why regional integration and the joint defense of democracy cannot remain a rhetorical aspiration. At the time of the increasing atomization, polarization, and authoritarian threats, we need to build a regional architecture of the democratic defense. This implies strengthening multilateral organization, coordinating common strategies against disinformation, organized crime, and populism, and creating effective mechanisms for protection of human rights and institutional stability. The defense of the democracy in Latin America will be more effective to extend that it is collective. From Chile, we firmly believe in the foreign policy of values such as democracy, human rights, and multilateralism. We support rules-based international order that is fair and transparent, reflect the voices of all regions, and promote collective solutions at global challenges. The background I have just mentioned is wake-up call. Today, democracy is not guaranteed. It requires care, legitimacy, and solid institutions that listen, respond, and act to demand to the citizens. We cannot allow the system of government to become just an aspiration. From the academic field, I encourage you to get actively involved in the great challenge of our times. The climate crisis, migration, gender equality, and the complex system of the information and disinformation. Universities and study centers have a key role to play in contributing knowledge and critical reflection to these debates that affect us all. Because democracies are built, defended, and renewed every day with conviction and collective commitment. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary, for I think what has been a truly remarkable presentation to us this afternoon, tracing the phases in the growth of democracy, the phases in the regression in democracy, drawing on many scholars, setting out for us the situation in Latin America in particular, although I think it is a picture that is more and more familiar throughout the world, and informing us about the initiatives that Chile is taking and the work that Chile has done, and of course the work that is born of Chile's own experience as a country which lost its democracy during the period of the dictatorship and then rebuilt it. And I think also challenging academia, people in think tanks, people who work generally in this area to do more. I want to throw the discussion open to the floor, and I want to, in doing that, to welcome in addition to the ambassador of Chile, whom I welcomed earlier, the ambassadors of Mexico, Brazil, Peru, Barbados, and the deputy ambassador of Colombia. Am I missing somebody? Argentina, my apologies, of course. And my apologies for that. And also to welcome indeed the Director General of the IIA, Alex White. So can I ask if there are questions? I have one or two questions that have come in online, questions in the room. And please, if you can just identify yourself and your organization not for my benefit, because I think I know most of you, but for the benefit of the Undersecretary of State. So, first question.
Muchas gracias por tu discurso. Excelente. I just want to ask two things really quickly. Obviously, one of the possible broken promises of democracy relates to economic inequality, which is particularly acute in Chile and across Latin America, also exists in Ireland and everywhere else, and maybe the lack of universal public services. So I suppose we know that extremism thrives on inequality, and I just wonder if you had something to say about that. And just secondarily, I thought it was really interesting. Sorry, I'm Breeden McGrath from Oxfam. I do apologize. Secondarily, it was really interesting that only 1% of Chileans trust political parties. And I think that's a key statistic that we should all take away from today. I'm still thinking of, even when I was there and lived there, the 78% of Chileans who voted for a new constitution in 2020. And I suppose, those processes, both of them that failed subsequently, were because they were creatures of the political system and political parties rather than real democracy. Again, you're talking about the broken promises. I just wonder whether, where is Chile's new constitution going to come? What about those 78% of people still waiting? And is there a way to take that process, the constitution, which should be a document of the people, by the people, to take that process closer to the people and out of the hands of the political parties? Thank you.
Thanks, Breed.
Thank
Do you want to take them individually, or I can take a couple?
A couple of questions, I think.
Yeah, if you prefer that. Francis, yeah.
I can be very quick because, in fact, my question has basically been asked. I was going to ask about the constitutional referendums in Chile and what went wrong, and how are you going about redressing the situation after those two failed attempts to change the constitution to presumably greatly reinforce the democratic framework in Chile?
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Gloria, if you want to,
Yeah,
to go ahead with those, and then I can take maybe a couple more. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there another question from anybody?
Okay.
Or maybe if you answer those two.
Okay. About the constitutional process in Chile, I think that is the context of this happened is in the profound of the discontent of the policy parties. One political scientist in Chile says we are system parties in the hydroponic system parties, because we are along parties, and some parties, important parties, but they don't have basis and connect with the society. No, they are not in the society. The party is out of the society. Maybe that is one of reason. But I think in the el malestar, what is the
Younger.
The anger of the people in Chile happens in a lot of time. I remember one of the study of the United Nations in our region, the program of United Nations in Chile, says in 1990s, Chile is a modern country, but it's an anger country. For one reason about the modernization system is so fast, but we're not understanding the party structures, the situation in Chile, what happened in Chile, what is the hunger, the people. Maybe one of these reasons is the inequality in Chile, because we are inequality in Chile. It's not the most important in Latin America, but it's important. And the access to the services, health, education, and other things. In Latin America, we don't have access for these services. No, we don't have a welfare state in our countries. That is a great impact. You have to pay for health, for education, for your house and different things, and that is one of the answers about, I think, the anger situation and the social riots in different moments in 90s, in 2019. And I think now the constitutional process is not the answer now. we are now discussion about the election, the next president of our country. We are in a electoral process, but now nobody discuss about the constitutional change. But it's so important now to answer about the health, education, and other security things. Is so important now in Chile, and that is we need to be better the response of our political parties and the structure and the state for these things in our society, I think.
Okay. I have a question which has come in online from Heather Burke, who's a researcher at the IIEA, and it's asking about something you mentioned in your speech, which is the feminist foreign policy.
My favorite issue.
Okay, well, you must have planted the question then, because it's and what she's asking is, what does a feminist foreign policy look like in practice? And since its introduction in 2023, have you noticed impacts in terms of democratic inclusion and engagement?
Well, we identify that, like we're talking about in the previous meeting, but we identify the gender equality like one of the main important of our foreign policy in our country, because we understand that is commitment with the democracy and the human rights. And we understand that this, in Chile, we are working and approve the different agreements about this since 1950 in our country. But we support that in different government with different point of view and different ideological vision, but we support that. And we understand in this government, name it the feminist foreign policy, because we need to enforce and project our efforts now. We identify different levels of our foreign policy in that. We identify the bilateral, multilateral cooperation and trade and consular issues in our matters. And we identified 8 of specific issues in our work. For example, climate change, human rights, promote democracy, trade, care, security, care system security, and 8 different points. And we have now action plan and implement action plan. And if you visit our website, we are find our action plan and the action plan with the put in action. And that is important for us because it's a concrete way to advance in our vision about the human rights, democracy, and our foreign policy. And we understand that is maybe a seal about our foreign policy, because it's confident and coincidence and coherent with the other things in our foreign policy.
Thank you, Gloria. Are there other questions in the room? Yes.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. Very interesting. I wanted to ask you, how do you see multilateral cooperation when addressing the health and education crisis in Latin America? Because many people see it as, each country's problems, but do you see an active cooperation to address these very major issues that affect democracy and like indoctrination when it comes to democracy?
Well, maybe one example, the role of the UNESCO, for example, in education issues is so important, and we understand. And the UNESCO have one of the main things about the access to information, disinformation, and put some the politics issues and active propose the policies in this way. I think that is different things in United Nations and resolution of the United Nations in this way is the same thing. I think it's so important to understand that multilateralism, the response of the weakness of the multilateralism is more multilateralism, not less multilateralism. And we understand that is so important, and we understand that the multilateralism and the solution, shared solutions, is more important than the only isolated solution in our countries.
Barry, yourself?
Thanks again, Undersecretary. It's a real honor to have you here. You mentioned about the digital revolution, and I like how you said there are positive things about access to information, for example, and education, which are often overlooked, but there's also risks and threats about misinformation and disinformation, which you mentioned in your presentation. Can you share any lessons learned in Chile, or indeed from your experience in politics and from academia, about how misinformation and disinformation threats can be effectively addressed? Anything that Europeans might learn from your experiences?
Yeah. In my past experience, so I was a counselor and a president of the Council of Transparency, and I was talking about the transparency of the algorithm, for example. That is an important issue because, for example, we are with the artificial intelligence now. We are making decisions about the algorithm and put our public policy in different ways and different people and different persons with this decision. If you don't have a transparency in that, maybe you have a discriminate some people, no, so population in this decision and make decisions. For this reason, it's so important. Technology is good. Artificial technology is a good news, but you need to see, regulate, and have a good things. In the same thing that we are in this misinformation in our country, our Minister of Science and the government and communication in Chile promote the discussion about what can we do about this misinformation in our society, because we have a lot of people, all of people in Chile have in this country and other countries too, have a cell phone and all the time is connected, and all the people affect all the time, confront the face all the time this misinformation all the time. What happened with that, and how this response and answer about the discussion about the freedom information and freedom information and access to information and freedom press against these other things about this misinformation and spread misinformation and false news. That is a good discussion in our country. In our country, the commission about the academic and public policy makers and different people elaborate what inform about that for discussing Chile how measures we place in our country to confront this situation. And we are in discussion open now because it's not easy. For example, regulate platforms is not easy. It's a good news for the newspapers, for example, no, or the digital medias. But is the solution? I think it's a big question in our countries. But in Chile, we are a discussion. We have a strategic about for example, in the artificial intelligence for our country, discuss different ministries and different visions in our country and institutional discussion about this. For artificial intelligence strategic for our vision about in public policies, transparency algorithm and ChatGPT in Spanish or in Latin language. That is I think is a way to face this discussion in our country.
Could I maybe just ask you just one question arising from your discussion of the situation in Latin America generally, and that has been the growth of what one might call libertarian style politics and libertarian candidates, and the election of people on what we might call a libertarian agenda. Do you see that as a continuing trend, and what do you think is contributing to it? And do you think it's a phenomenon that may...
Difficult to answer in my position now, but it's difficult to answer. But I think, but the phenomena, and I answer in my position, you understand that?
Understand, yes.
Okay. But the phenomena is we are worried is about the polarization in our societies. The public opinion and the public debates now is in different countries in our societies is polarization is not to build and make a decision and agreements about different issues. The most important thing, work together in that. Now we are at polarization debates in our countries, and that is bad for the democracy in the future, because it's a weakness for our institutions. Some sectors about where the extremely ideas attack the institutions and the independence of the institution, the separate of the powers in our institution. That is no good for our countries and trends, of course, to our democracy. We understand, but that is the correct answer in my position. Okay.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? If we don't, I think we'll move to a conclusion. Let me thank you again, Gloria, for fantastic talk to us and for responding to, I think, some very, very probing questions. I know that you were up very early this morning or yesterday morning. That you've been traveling through the night, so we'll give you a break now. Thank you again very much for being with us, for sharing your thoughts with us. Good luck for the rest of your visit to Dublin and to Ireland. Don't confine yourself to the official business. It's a good city. It's a good city to be in. And good luck with your work. And we wish you every success with what you are doing.
Thank you, and congrats for this opportunity to think and talking about these so important issues now. Thank you
very much.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.